One day Ahab said to Naboth, "Since your vineyard is so convenient to my palace, I would like to buy it to use as a vegetable garden. I will give you a better vineyard in exchange, or if you prefer, I will pay you for it." But Naboth replied, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance that was passed down by my ancestors." "What's the matter?" his wife Jezebel asked him. "What's made you so upset that you're not eating?" "I asked Naboth to sell me his vineyard or trade it, but he refused," Ahab told her. "Are you the king of Israel or not?" Jezebel demanded. "Get up and eat something and don't worry about it. I'll get you Naboth's vineyard." It's almost more like Jezebel runs the show in a lot of ways. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Alright, so we are looking at 1 Kings chapter 21, and there's been a lot of stuff about different kings in Israel and Judah, but especially Israel for the past couple of chapters. I mean, back in chapter 18, Elijah the prophet entered the scene and did some cool stuff. Actually, maybe 17 was when he first came. I don't know. Somewhere around there. But he's been a factor lately. And then, I guess, King Ahab was at war with Ben-Hadad of Aram, and so all sorts of just conflict and tensions and stuff like that going around. Meanwhile, Elijah's concerned for his life, not only because of the conflicts going on, but because, like, there's a prominent woman. I'm not entirely sure if she's the queen or just has an official position of some sort or whatever. But anyway, prominent woman named Jezebel who kind of has it out for the prophets of God. But I digress. That's just kind of general things that have been happening in 1 Kings lately. And, yeah. Time to hop into this chapter and see what happens from here. So here we go. 1 Kings chapter 21. Now there was a man named Naboth from Jezreel, who owned a vineyard in Jezreel beside the palace of King Ahab of Samaria. One day Ahab said to Naboth, "Since your vineyard is so convenient to my palace, I would like to buy it to use as a vegetable garden. I will give you a better vineyard in exchange, or if you prefer, I will pay you for it." But Naboth replied, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance that was passed down by my ancestors." So Ahab went home angry and sullen because of Naboth's answer. The king went to bed with his face to the wall and refused to eat. Okay, so, like, family-owned land was a very big thing back then, because it was kind of divvied up per orders from the Lord, in a way. I mean, the different tribal areas were determined that way. I don't remember any passages where it outright said that, like, you know, there were specific commands the Lord gave on how to split up the land amongst certain tribes and families and whatnot. But I mean, they had to come to some sort of decision, which would have been probably approved by leaders who had been approved by God. So, all that to say, it was kind of a big deal having ancestral family land. And Naboth doesn't want to give up his land to King Ahab. So Ahab doesn't like that and kind of just walks away pouting about it. Then we get to verse 5. "What's the matter?" his wife Jezebel asked him. "What's made you so upset that you're not eating?" "I asked Naboth to sell me his vineyard or trade it, but he refused," Ahab told her. "Are you the king of Israel or not?" Jezebel demanded. "Get up and eat something and don't worry about it. I'll get you Naboth's vineyard." So, yeah, like, first off, okay, now it's made abundantly clear, Jezebel is Ahab's wife. So, yes, thus, the queen. And once again, we kind of see Naboth being a bit, I don't know, timid. At least initially. Like, that was his initial reaction to getting demands, to receiving demands from Ben-Hadad to, like, take some of his stuff. At first, he was just going to be like, okay, sure, fine. You could have this stuff. But then Ben-Hadad kept asking for more, and then he, not even making the decision just by himself, he consults other, you know, officials in his kingdom, and then eventually, per their leading, decides, nope, this is enough. I can't keep giving in to these demands. Really, it's almost more like Jezebel runs the show in a lot of ways. So, yeah, just like she also had a major hand in deciding, you know, which prophets would get help and which ones would get killed and all sorts of stuff like that, seemingly over and above the action that Ahab took. She is now kind of taking charge of this situation. And then we get to verse 8. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent them to the elders and other leaders of the town where Naboth lived. In her letters she commanded, "Call the citizens together for a time of fasting, and give Naboth a place of honor. And then seat 2 scoundrels across from him who will accuse him of cursing God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death." So the elders and other town leaders followed the instructions Jezebel had written in the letters, because they thought they were written by Ahab. They called for a fast and put Naboth at a prominent place before the people. Then the 2 scoundrels came and sat down across from him, and they accused Naboth before all the people, saying he cursed God and the king. So he was dragged outside the town and stoned to death. The town leaders then sent word to Jezebel, "Naboth has been stoned to death." Okay, gonna pause there for a bit. Yeah, so Jezebel decides to pretty much act like she's Ahab in this case, writes letters as if they're from him, you know, seals them with his seal. So basically acts like these are completely official from the king instructions, saying, all right, call these people together, and then we're gonna, you know, call Naboth out and have him stoned to death. All this just to get his field. So then they go through with all that. They send word to Jezebel, and then we get to verse 15. When Jezebel heard the news, she said to Ahab, "You know the vineyard Naboth wouldn't sell you? Well, you can have it now. He's dead." So Ahab immediately went down to the vineyard of Naboth to claim it. But the Lord said to Elijah, "Go down to meet King Ahab of Israel, who rules in Samaria. He will be at Naboth's vineyard in Jezreel, claiming it for himself. Give him this message. This is what the Lord says. Wasn't it enough that you killed Naboth? Must you rob him too? Because you have done this, dogs will lick your blood at the very place where they licked the blood of Naboth. So, my enemy, you have found me," Ahab exclaimed to Elijah. Oh, okay, well, actually, let me not carry on. For some reason, I missed the end quote there and thought that was continuing the same proclamation. But it's not, so I'll pause for a sec. So, Jezebel, not saying how it happened, tells Ahab that Naboth is dead now and, you know, he has a better opportunity at least to go and claim the field. But then God tells Elijah to meet Ahab there and tell him that's wrong. Not only that that's wrong, but that now there are going to be consequences for Ahab. Let me just make sure I haven't missed any notes thus far. No, okay. This note here at verse 17 says, specifies Elijah the Tishbite, which I think that was what it said about, you know, the prophet, the main prophet Elijah from a couple of chapters ago when it was first introducing him. But, so yeah, once again, Elijah has words against Ahab and his kingdom. Kind of like he did against the prophets of Baal before, who had been, like, pushed or promoted or supported, at least, by Jezebel. But, yeah. And, like, in a way, Ahab is responsible for this. Because, like, it was his wanting of the field that prompted that. And also other just inaction of his to stop his wife. Or anything like that. So, yeah. Now, basically, Elijah is telling Naboth that, well, now you are going to die at the same place that Naboth died. Then we get to verse 20, and I'll continue on. Now that this is not Elijah speaking. So, my enemy, you have found me, Ahab exclaimed to Elijah. Yes, Elijah answered. I have come because you have sold yourself to what is evil in the Lord's sight. So now the Lord says, I will bring disaster on you and consume you. I will destroy every one of your male descendants, slave and free alike, anywhere in Israel. I am going to destroy your family as I did the family of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and the family of Baasha, son of Ahijah. For you have made me very angry and have led Israel to sin. And regarding Jezebel, the Lord says, dogs will eat Jezebel's body at the plot of land in Jezreel. I'll pause there for now. It is going to continue on. But, yeah, so now it's not even just that Ahab's going to die where Naboth died, but although I think this prophecy was said before, I might be mixing it up with previous kings in prior chapters, but since, you know, the reason for God punishing them and killing off all their descendants was for not following the Lord, it makes sense that Ahab here and his family would get the same fate. Especially now that Ahab has so thoroughly turned against God. So, yeah, like, you might think it's really more Jezebel that has turned against God than Ahab, but again, Ahab has been, at best, a relatively inactive force in all this, very passive about the whole situation, and, like, he even considers Elijah to be his enemy. If he really loved the Lord, that would not be the case. No, there in verse 21, Hebrew lacks the part where it says, Hebrew lacks the words, so now the Lord says. Okay. That would kind of then imply that Elijah would be the one to bring disaster rather than God. But at the same time, like, as a prophet, he, like, is speaking for and from the Lord often. And then here in verse 23, as in several Hebrew manuscripts, Syriac and Latin Vulgate, most Hebrew manuscripts read at the city wall rather than at the plot of land in Jezreel. But I mean, the vineyard that Naboth owned was like just outside the city, which is why Ahab wanted it, because it was so conveniently located next to the city. So, possibly even like just outside the city walls. So that definitely could still refer to the same place. Alright, anyway, continuing this declaration from the Lord about Ahab and his descendants, we get to verse 24. The members of Ahab's family who die in the city will be eaten by dogs, and those who die in the field will be eaten by vultures. Sounds familiar from the previous kings who disobeyed God and stopped worshiping him. No one else so completely sold himself to what was evil in the Lord's sight as Ahab did under the influence of his wife Jezebel. His worst outrage was worshipping idols, just as the Amorites had done, the people whom the Lord had driven out from the land ahead of the Israelites. But when Ahab heard this message, he tore his clothing, dressed in burlap, and fasted. He even slept in burlap and went about in deep mourning. Then another message from the Lord came to Elijah. Do you see how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he has done this, I will not do what I promised during his lifetime. It will happen to his sons. I will destroy his dynasty. So, still, because Ahab is sorrowful and humbles himself over all this to the Lord, then God is like, okay, I'm still going to do this stuff. I'm just not going to do it while he's alive, because, you know, he's kind of made it clear that he's sorry. But it's still going to happen. So yeah, all the being eaten by dogs or vultures, like, that all happened to the previous kings of Israel who just completely disregarded the Lord's commands and turned to other gods and things like that. And I almost wonder, to an extent, if, like, he finally found it within himself to be like, enough is enough. I'm not just gonna go along with what Jezebel has been doing all this time. And, you know, basically be her right-hand man rather than it being him as the one really in charge and her as, you know, the queen, the helper, the, one who kind of goes along with things. Let me read this note here in verse 26. Hebrew term, literally round thing. Oh, yeah, we had this note before when it mentioned idols. I would guess part of what made this so bad was not just that he worshipped idols, because a whole bunch of previous kings had done that. It wouldn't call him worse than the others if that was all he did. I would imagine there was a particular way that the Amorites worshipped their idols that was so repugnant to the Lord that made Ahab's worship so much worse. But, yeah. So anyway, Elijah's back in Israel. Ahab is kind of sorry for turning away from the Lord, but I mean, the consequences are still going to happen. They've just been delayed now. And we still haven't really heard about the ultimate, or at least the resulting ownership of Naboth's vineyard. Don't know if that's really an important part of the story anymore. It was just really the motivation for Jezebel killing off Naboth, Ahab trying to get the vineyard, and all that kind of stuff. And that also turned out to be where they met, where Elijah and Ahab met once more. But anyway, that's all we've got in 1 Kings 21. All right. So, that was chapter 21 for you. Basically, Ahab gets a little greedy, but he's also not like, I'm not sure what the right word is, but like, he's not willing enough to take action to actually, get or do what would really be necessary to get what he wants in this case. Jezebel takes care of it for him, because of course. Because she don't care. But then he gets confronted by Elijah, and yeah, I mean, he does feel kind of sorry for things in the end, but really that just, like, delays the punishment. I guess the case wasn't too far off from that with Solomon either. Like, he turned away from God, but, like, because of what he had done that was good, the kingdom split happened after he died. I don't know, it's similar-ish. Anyway, I digress. So, there's just one chapter left in 1 Kings, so the next one will be the final chapter. But that's all we got for now. So, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel to see new videos as I post them. Look down in the description for links to social media pages and all that good stuff. And leave comments down below there with any thoughts or questions or anything like that. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, until next time, stay cool, people.